Hey friends, today is all about onions. If you've ever wanted to grow some yourself, stick around today and we'll learn all about growing and caring for onions. So let's dive in. So when you're talking about onions, the first thing you should know is that for bulbing onions, there are three different kinds. You have short day onions, zones 8 through 10, which is my zone, what I'm showing you here, what I'm growing. And intermediate day onions, those are zones 5 through 7. And your long day onions are going to be zones 3 through 5, way up north. It goes according to daylight requirements. So make sure you know what zone you're in order to pick the right variety. For zone 8 through 10, short day onions are recommended. They're best for southern regions with mild winters. So short day onions require 10 to 12 hours of daylight to bulb and are best suited for southern regions. However, your long day onions need 14 to 16 hours of daylight and they thrive in your northern climates. And your intermediate onions, they kind of fall between the two and they require about 12 to 14 hours of daylight. They're more suitable for mid-range climates. Why it's crucial to pick the right variety for your region and your zone so that you will get an onion that will actually bulb up. These onions should be planted here in the south between the 15th of November and the 15th of January for optimal growth, and so that you can harvest in late spring and early summer. Some of the best varieties that I've grown are the Texas Early Grano, your candy variety, and the Granex. I have had a lot of success with those particular varieties, but you can experiment and try whichever ones that you think you might be able to grow and what sound interesting to you. I tend to like the sweeter onions as well. You're going to want to maintain a consistent moisture in the soil. Don't have it waterlogged, but especially during dry spells, you want to water regularly and prevent moisture stress, which can affect your bulbs developing. Ensure that the soil is moist and just check it with your finger. Do the 1 inch test. And if you feel dampness under there, then don't water it anymore. The average probably is once a week if you water thoroughly when it's dry outside. But you can always do the finger test and check for yourself. And fertilizing is very important for onions. You're going to want to be consistent and come up with a schedule. What I normally do is I fertilize them about every 3 or 4 weeks during their growing phase. And I use a nitrogen rich fertilizer, which is that first number on the bag that you see of those three numbers. Normally, blood meal is my best option. It's pretty fast acting and it's organic and gives your onions a really good boost of nitrogen. And I do that about every 3 to 4 weeks. And then I incorporate a balanced fertilizer with all three numbers being balanced, your NPK numbers, your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and make sure those three numbers are fairly close to each other. And that way your onions are getting a balanced mix of whatever they need to either bulb or for rooting purposes or the green growth that you get up on top of your onion. That's a very important thing. The more greenery and the healthier your onions are on top of the soil, the better they're going to bulb up below the soil. The key here is don't over fertilize. The frequency affects the bulbing of your onions and their growth stages. So applying nitrogen too early can reduce your stands and yields, and excessive nitrogen can delay your maturity and make bulbs softer and more prone to rot. So proper timing is definitely important, and make the initial application when you first plant your onions. And then after the roots are established, kind of look for a little bit of green growth up above. And when it gets to be a few inches above the ground, then start fertilizing on a more regular basis. And then a very important thing is to stop fertilizing once you see those little bulbs begin to form. Then stop fertilizing to ensure that you're going to get proper development of the actual bulb of your onion itself. Then when the top green part starts to flop over and die, then you know it's time to harvest. And when you do harvest them, dig around with a shovel. This will ensure that you'll get the whole onion out in one piece. Now, as far as planting, your seeds are super tiny, as you can see, and they're so small that you just want to take a little pinch and broadcast them over the top of whatever soil you're planting them in. And as you see, I'm putting them in little peat pots here, but you can also dig a little trench or do a little line with your finger and plant them in a line and broadcast them directly into the garden. And you can do it that way. And once you're finished putting the seeds on the top and broadcasting them into either a small line or into little pots like this, I'm just going to add a little bit more potting soil to the top and cover them up. I don't want to bury them too deep because they are tiny seeds, and you only want to bury them about 1/8 of an inch under the soil so you'll get good germination. Because the seeds are so tiny, they need to push up through that soil. And it can take anywhere from 10 to 14 days to germinate. It just fluctuates depending on the surroundings, but make sure that you label them well, date them, and put the varieties and what you planted, because sometimes it's easy to forget once we're planting a bunch of things what is actually in the containers. I've done that before. And pat the soil down just a little bit to make sure there's contact with the soil and the seeds. And then you're going to want to try to water these in really well to make sure you give them a good start of moisture. Don't drown them because they'll float around because the seeds are so tiny, but just give them a little bit of water. Make sure you keep them damp the first 2 weeks, but not sopping wet, to make sure that they have plenty of water in order to germinate. Make sure you put them in a nice sunny spot in your yard or underneath the grow lights if you are growing them inside, and give them plenty of water. I usually mulch them once I see them pop up and get a little bit of greenery, and then eventually they'll look like this and they'll get a little bit longer. And I'm doing in containers, I'm growing them in a greenhouse. As you see, here's another container. I also have them planted in plant beds. You can plant onions anywhere, and you can use the same concept for your spring onions or bunching onions. The difference with those is that you can plant those pretty much all year long. It doesn't have to be a specific season, maybe not midwinter way up north without protection, but you can grow green and spring onions just about any time in pots, in ground. You do want to succession plant those though, so you can have more onions available for your salads and whatever else you're using them for as you pick them, and just do row after row and do 2, 3 weeks apart, and you'll always have onions available. Make sure you have compost rich potting soil, just like with regular onions. Scatter the seeds if you're planting them from seed, which is really the most economical way to go. And then you can actually get the types and varieties that you're interested in growing. And also sow green onions about 2 or 3 weeks before your last frost date if you're planting them outside. They do need a little tiny bit of warmth, but you can't have a frozen ground in order to plant them in ground. And you can also use liquid fertilizer with kelp or fish emulsion, or a balanced organic liquid fertilizer every 3 to 4 weeks for your bunching and spring onions. That helps give them a boost and help them grow faster. And spring onions take about 8 weeks to mature from seed until you can harvest them. So it's a great addition to any garden, and you don't have to wait quite as long as you do when you're growing your bulbing onions. Those take much longer. I hope you found something helpful in today's video and something to inspire you to grow your own onions at home. Doesn't have to be intimidating, and they're pretty basic if you follow the right care instructions and you pick out the right varieties. So try it for yourself. You will find it very rewarding, and you might surprise you how good you'll do on the first time around. I appreciate you taking the time out to be with me today, and I hope you go out and make yourself a great day.